If you've ever struggled to sell your product, your service, your course, or your coaching, and you're wondering why people say, looks cool, but never buy, it's not because your offer sucks. It's because you don't understand the dark side of marketing psychology. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something really clear. I have nothing to sell you in this video. I'm not using any of these tactics on you. I'm giving them to you because if you're a business owner, a coach, or a marketer, you need to understand how these work. Not so you can manipulate people, but so you can use these tools ethically, powerfully, and with full awareness. Because the truth is, these tactics are being used right now, every day, in ways that get people to take action, say yes, and buy now. The question is, will you ignore them, or will you learn how to use them to actually help people make decisions that are good for them? Well, that's what this video is about. So let's dive into 10 of the most powerful, and yes, darkest, psychological tactics and strategies being used in sales and marketing today. And this first one, this one changes everything about how you frame the pain someone's already living in, even when they don't see it yet. Tactic number 1 is called latent to realized to extreme pain. I appreciate it. It sounds fancy, but it's actually pretty simple. Most people won't move until staying where they are feels more painful than changing. That's the truth. And if you want to sell more of anything, your service, your course, your coaching, you need to learn how to create that moment of realization. So let's make this real. Think of someone who has a decent 9-to-5 job. They make okay money, their life isn't great, but it's not falling apart either. They get by, but underneath the surface, they hate Mondays. They feel invisible at work. They mindlessly scroll through their phone at night to distract themselves from the fact that their life doesn't really feel like their life. If you ask them how things are going, they'll say something like, yeah, I'm doing all right. But if you ask them a more powerful question, like, what happens if you're still doing the exact same thing in 3 years? Silence. That's the crack. That moment when all right stops feeling all right at all. That's what we call latent pain becoming realized. It was always there, they just didn't know it yet. And this is where you turn the screw, not to be cruel, but to show them what's possible. For example, other people in their field building online businesses or growing audiences or attracting clients through marketing that works, taking control of their time and their income. And suddenly, what they currently have starts to feel like a trap. Now you say something like, if you don't make a move now, you're going to get left behind. That's extreme pain. That's the moment that the sale is made. Because the second someone truly feels the cost of doing nothing, and not just understands it intellectually, but feels it emotionally, well, they start searching for a way out. And if you've positioned your offer right, you become that way out. Now, here's how to apply this. Start by asking better questions. Questions that uncover the problem behind the problem. Don't just ask what they want, ask why they haven't already achieved it. Ask what their current path looks like in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. Ask how they'd feel if nothing changed. Next, use future pacing. Help them visualize what their inaction actually costs them. Don't just say, you'll be stuck. Show them. Describe the frustration, the regret, the opportunities slipping through their fingers, while their competition gets sharper and faster and further ahead. Then, you agitate. Raise the stakes, point out the costs of doing nothing, make them feel, again, more emotionally, what staying put will actually mean. Because here's the truth. People are like frogs in a pot of slowly boiling water. They won't leap until it's too late. So your job is to raise the temperature just enough that they jump, not by force, but by clarity. That's how you move someone from stuck to sold. Okay, let's move on to the next tactic now. Tactic number 2 is called perceived control. Here's what you need to know. People don't want to be sold to. They want to feel like they're the ones making the decision. So the trick is this. You guide the conversation, but make them feel like they're the ones that are leading it. Let me show you what this looks like. Not that long ago, a client I was working with was struggling to close discovery calls. She had the expertise, her offer was solid, but people kept saying, let me think about it, then ghosting her. So we changed just one thing. Instead of jumping straight into her sales pitch, she started every conversation by saying, would it be all right if I shared a few ideas that might help based on what you just told me? That one question changed everything. Why? Because when the client said yes, and they always do, even though she was steering the conversation the entire time, the client felt in control. It felt like it was their choice, not like they were getting some sales pitch that they didn't ask for. And that's the magic. They still take the action, but it feels like it was their idea all along. So, how do you apply this? First, ask for permission. Not fake permission, but like real micro agreements that make your clients and your customers feel like they're saying yes to each next step. For example, do you want me to walk you through how this might work? Or can I show you what others in your space are doing right now that's working? Second, give them choices, even if all roads lead back to you. For example, would you prefer we do this one-on-one or start with a strategy call? Or the classic, would you rather fix X first or Y? Third, position your offer like a decision, not a demand. You're not saying, buy this. You're saying, here's the path that I'd take if I were in your shoes. It's totally your call. Because when someone feels ownership of a decision, they're far less likely to resist it. That's why this works. Think of it like this. You're not dragging them toward a sale. You're laying stepping stones. So they're the ones walking, but you chose the path that they take. And that's how you stay in control, by giving it away. Okay, next, let's move on to tactic number 3, which is a little dark. This is why tactic number 3 is called the pit of darkness. If you want to sell transformation and not just a product or service, then your story can't start at the top. It's got to start at the bottom, because the lower the pit, the higher the payoff. Let me explain. There was a coach I worked with who wanted to sell his high-ticket program. His pitch was polished, his content was super slick, but his story went something like this. I used to be stuck, then I found this framework, and now I'm making great money doing what I love. Now, technically, on the surface, it sounds fine, but there was no emotion there, no tension, no risk, no darkness. So we rewrote it. We started his story with the moment that he hit zero in his bank account. The part where he was sitting on the floor crying because a client ghosted on an invoice that he desperately needed. The part where he almost gave up. Then we built the climb from there. And that changed everything because people could see themselves in his struggle. So now they didn't just admire him, they related to him. When you share your pit, your low point, your breakdown, the I almost quit moment, you earn trust. And when you show the rise that you made after that, you create belief. Belief that if you made it out, then maybe they can too. So, how do you use this? First, find your pit. What was the worst moment? The moment before you figured things out? Where were you mentally, emotionally, financially? Second, this part's important, don't sanitize it or water it down. Don't skip the part where it sucked the most. That's the part that people remember. That's the part that builds connection. Third, show the turning point. What changed? What did you do that pulled you out of it? Make sure that that lesson is clear and make sure that your offer connects to that journey. Because the more dramatic the contrast between where you were and where you are now, the more compelling that your transformation becomes. It's the same reason that every great movie, and every bad movie too, actually, starts with a fall. We don't care that the hero wins in the end. We care how far they had to climb in order to get there. No one buys the perfect origin story. They buy the comeback. So don't hide the pit. That's the part that sells. But what do you do if you still don't feel like you've made it, or you're still battling imposter syndrome? Well, that's where this next tactic comes into play, so let me share that with you now. Tactic number 4 is called the adventurer frame. This one's a game changer if you've ever felt like you weren't expert enough to sell what you do. Here's the thing. People don't always want a guru. In fact, often the more polished and all-knowing you appear, the harder it is for your audience or your customers or your clients to relate to you. So instead of positioning yourself as the expert at the top of the mountain, try positioning yourself as the adventurer, someone in motion, learning, exploring, sharing, testing, all of their journey in real time. I once worked with a guy trying to sell AI consulting services, but he was new to the space, had no credentials, no past clients, no real authority, just curiosity and a strong desire to learn. So we reframed everything. Instead of saying, I'm the expert, he started saying, I'm building a system to help small businesses use AI to save time and grow faster. And I'm documenting everything that works along the way. And guess what? He started getting inbound leads. Fast. Because when you're an adventurer, you invite people to come along for the ride. They're not buying expertise, they're buying access to someone figuring it out in real time. So they don't have to. And here's how to apply this. Start by admitting where you are in the journey. Confidently, not apologetically. Say things like, I'm testing this strategy right now, and here's what I've learned so far. Or, I'm not the world's leading expert on this, but I am obsessed with figuring it out and applying it to real businesses. Second, create in public. Share your experiments, your wins, your failures, your losses, your tests along the way. Show people what's working, what's not. Transparency builds trust. Third, lead the way. Even if you're only 1 or 2 steps ahead of your clients or customers, that's enough. You're still someone who can save them time and avoid mistakes and help them make progress faster. This is the power of the adventurer frame, and it turns not being an expert into your superpower and your point of differentiation. Think of it like this. You don't need to be the guide who's already reached the summit. You just need to be the one who's holding the flashlight, walking slightly ahead. And for the right audience, that's more than enough to win the sale. All right, tactic number 5 is called throw rocks at the enemy. So let me break that down now. Now, this one's controversial, but insanely effective. Because sometimes the best way to connect with your audience is to stand against something. Let me explain. When someone is trying to make a change, whether that's starting a business or hiring a coach or switching careers, they're not just facing challenges, they're facing resistance, doubt from others, criticism, internal fears, and often Haters. So when you stand beside them and throw rocks, metaphorical rocks, at their enemies, you're not being negative, you're being loyal. You're showing them whose side you're on. I once worked with a fitness coach who helped women ditch diet culture, but her messaging was just way too soft. She was trying to appeal to everyone, including the people that she secretly wanted to rebel against. So we made a shift. Instead of saying, let me help you get healthy, she started saying, I help women break free from the toxic diet industry that profits off shame. Boom. Now, she had a common enemy. And that meant her audience didn't just see her as a coach. They saw her as an ally, a defender, a voice for what they believed in but couldn't say out loud. And her business exploded. So how do you apply this? First, start by identifying your audience's, your customers, your clients' enemies. These enemies could be a mindset, a system, a broken process, even a person. For example, if you help people grow their businesses without hustle, the enemy is grind culture. If you help people get clients without cold DMs, the enemy is sleazy sales tactics. If you help creators build slow, sustainable growth, the enemy is overnight success gurus. Next, make it crystal clear who you are not for. Draw a line in the sand. When you do that, the right people lean in harder because they feel safe and understood and represented. And finally, speak their frustrations out loud. Say the things they wish they could say. Use your content to call out what's broken, and then show them your way of doing it better. Because when you share an enemy, you create a tribe. Okay, we're on a roll here. Let's keep going. Tactic number 6 is called objection inversion. You see, one of the biggest reasons people don't buy is also one of your greatest opportunities to close the sale, if you flip it. Because what feels like a deal breaker at first often turns out to be the exact reason they should say yes. Let me show you what I mean. A while back I was helping a business coach who offered a premium service, and he kept running into the same objection. This sounds amazing, but I just can't afford it right now. That was his sticking point. And at first, he tried to defend the price or justify the ROI, but it never worked. So instead, we inverted the objection. He started saying, I totally get that, and I just want to point something out. If getting clients and increasing revenue is the exact thing you're struggling with, isn't that why we're having this conversation in the first place? Now, instead of avoiding the objection, he turned it into the reason to take action. Suddenly, not being able to afford it wasn't a block. It was the proof that they needed. And this works with almost any objection. Objections like, I don't have time right now, become exactly. That's why you need systems that take less of it. Or, I've tried stuff like this before and it didn't work. Well, that becomes, and how much longer are you going to keep trying what's not working? Or the classic, I'm not sure I'm ready objection. Well, that becomes, no one ever is, but waiting rarely makes you more prepared. Action does. So, next question then is, how do you apply this? Well, you start by writing down your top 3 most common objections, the ones you hear again and again and again. Then ask yourself, what belief is hiding inside this objection, and how can I flip it? Not by arguing, but by agreeing with it and reframing it as the reason to buy. Remember, you're not bulldozing their resistance, you're using it to your advantage. Because here's the truth. Objections aren't walls, they're simply doors waiting to be opened from the right angle. And when you flip the script, you don't just break down resistance, you weaponize it. Next up, tactic number 7. Personal favorite of mine and one of the most ethical and yet also persuasive ways to help someone take action. Now, we touched on this briefly before, but it's worth going into more depth here, which is why tactic number 7 is called future pacing, and it's one of the most powerful tools in persuasion because people don't just buy your offer. They buy a future version of themselves. So your job is to make that future version of themselves feel real. I remember working with an agency owner who was struggling to get people to book for long-term retainer deals. His pitch was good, his case studies were solid, but everything he said was rooted in what he did, not what life would look like for the client after working with him. So we made a simple change. Instead of saying, I'll write your landing pages, emails, and help you optimize conversions, he started saying, imagine waking up and your funnel's already making sales while you're out walking your dog, or getting coffee, or spending time with your kids. No more scrambling, no more guessing, just a system that brings in leads while you focus on running the business. And that changed everything. Because now the client wasn't just buying marketing, they were buying peace of mind and space and freedom. That is future pacing, showing someone what their life looks like after they've said yes. So here's how to use it. First, know what your audience really wants. Not just the surface goal, but the emotional payoff behind it. Is it confidence or freedom or credibility, safety? Next, you really want to paint the scene and use sensory details on real life situations. So don't just say you'll grow your business. Say things like you'll open your inbox to see leads already booked for the week. You'll stop second guessing every post and you'll get your evenings back. A copywriter friend of mine calls this Polaroid language, as it should paint a picture of what things look like. And finally, keep it grounded. Future pacing only works if it feels achievable. So match the vision to their current starting point. Make it feel like a natural next step, not some weird fantasy that's never going to happen. Because the truth is, people don't buy coaching. They buy how they think coaching will change them and make their lives better. So give them a window into that future and make them really feel it. It's like offering them a test drive, but instead of a car, you're letting them take their new identity for a spin. And once they've seen it, it's very hard to go back. We can take this a step further though, using something called status shift framing. So let me walk you through that now in tactic number 8. Status shift framing, which is actually quite tricky to say, is all about understanding that people don't just buy to solve problems, they buy to upgrade who they are. And when you understand that, your marketing changes. Because you stop talking about features and start talking to identity. But let me show you what I mean. I once helped a consultant who ran a group program for service providers. Their pitch: learn how to package and sell your services more effectively. Now, honestly, it was clear, but it wasn't aspirational. So we reframed it. Instead of just promising a skill set, we made the transformation about status. The new version looked like you'll go from blending in as a freelancer to standing out as the authority, the one clients pursue, not the one having to chase them down. That one shift reframed the entire offer and conversion rates jumped. Why? Because people don't just want to make more money, they want to be seen differently by their peers, by their clients, and most importantly, by themselves. So here's how to use status shift framing, which is still tricky to say. First, define the before and after identity. Who are they right now, and who are they going to become after working with you? For example, from overworked freelancer to respected expert, from faceless business to trusted brand, from guessing marketer to confident strategist. Second, use the right words to reflect that shift in identity. In other words, don't just say, here's what you get, say, here's what this makes you. This confirms their new identity. Still kind of confusing though, so here's some more examples. This is what high-performing consultants do, or smart founders invest in positioning early, and this is how leaders delegate without losing control. Remember, you're not just selling transformation, you're selling self-perception. And when you raise their status, you raise the value of what you offer. Because here's the truth. People will fight harder to protect their identity than to solve a simple pain. So give them a new identity, a better one, because your offer isn't just a result, it's a reflection of who they believe they're becoming. Speaking of identity, let's talk about tactic number 9 now. Tactic number 9 is called identity activation. People make decisions based on who they believe they are or who they want to become. And the moment you speak directly to that identity, they start to listen differently. Because when your messaging says, this is for people like you, it doesn't feel like marketing, it feels like belonging. I saw this work brilliantly with a client who sold a content strategy course. Before, her sales page was focused on tactics, headlines, formats, algorithms, all good stuff, but her conversion rates were pretty flat, so we rewrote it with one goal: activate the buyer's identity. We started using lines like, if you're the kind of person who obsesses over making things better, this course is for you. And if you're tired of playing the content game safe and you're ready to lead, not follow, you're in the right place. This messaging started attracting a different kind of buyer. People who saw themselves in the language. People who said, this finally feels like something made for me. So here's how you can use this. First, define the identity of your ideal customer. Not just demographics or job titles, but what they believe about themselves. Are they creators, builders, visionaries, underdogs, rebels, professionals who are tired of guessing? Second, speak to that identity in your marketing. Say things like, if you're the kind of person who, or this is for people who've always known they were meant for more, or most people play it safe. You're not most people. And third, reinforce their decision with that identity. When they take action, affirm it by saying things like, this is exactly what high-level people do, and you made a smart move, most people would have hesitated. You're not just selling a service here, you're confirming who they are or who they want to be. And here's the key. People will do almost anything to stay consistent with the story that they tell themselves. So if you can make your offer part of that story, they'll buy just to stay aligned. Because the sale doesn't happen in the pitch. It happens the moment that someone says, yeah, that's me. Next up, tactic number 10, and it's called dangerous simplicity. If you want people to buy, you have to make what you're offering feel simple, dangerously simple. Because complexity feels like work, simplicity feels like momentum, and momentum is what makes people take action. Now, I've got more examples for this one than pretty much all of the other ones combined, but for the sake of time here, let me tell you about a digital product creator I worked with who had an amazing system for generating leads. The system worked, I'd seen it myself, but the way that he explained it, I'm talking charts and jargon and 17 steps and multiple frameworks, well, by the time someone finished reading his offer, they were overwhelmed. So we stripped everything down to one single line. I'll help you set up one system that brings in new leads while you sleep. That's it. Same process, same value, but now it felt doable. Because instead of selling the mechanism, we sold the effect, and we made it feel like something that anyone could act on immediately. So here's how to use this. First, simplify your language. Remove the layers, don't try to impress with technical details, aim for clarity. Instead of a modular framework to optimize top-of-funnel performance, say a simple way to get more of the right people reaching out to you. Second, name the outcome in one sentence. If someone asked you, what do you help people do? Could you answer it without pausing? If not, you gotta keep cutting. Third, test your new messaging on a beginner. If they can't explain it back to you in their own words, it's too complex to sell it at scale. Here's the truth. You're not dumbing things down, you're speeding them up because, yes, your customers may want to learn, but more than that, they want to win. They want clarity, momentum, and results, not just more information. So if you can make the path feel obvious and the next step feel close, they'll take it. Think of it like this. People don't want to buy a 175-page playbook. They want the one-sentence shortcut that they can use right now. You give them that, and they'll automatically believe that you can give them everything else. And if you want to go even deeper into the psychology behind why people buy and how to ethically guide them towards saying yes, watch the next video that I've got linked up right here. I'll show you how to stack psychological marketing triggers in your messaging to make people want to buy without you ever feeling salesy. So feel free to tap or click that now, and I'll see you in there in just a second.